Hey, good morning. This is Chuck from Monocoque Metalworks. I'm messing around with some early wings today. We get a lot of calls for building really early bonnets, probably because we're one of the only sources where you can get it done right and really true to exactly the way it looked. The early bonnets were much more hand-built and are a lot different than the later stuff. We actually have 5 on deck to build. So I'm working on some wings this morning. I've pulled out these wings. They look a little crusty, but these are 4 of these super early wings that you would see on not just a flat floor bonnet with welded louvers, but also like an outside lock bonnet. These 4 wings have come from various projects that came along through the years. For one reason or another, they had one of these early ones on it. I picked it up in a pile of parts or whatever. They've been blasted and they're sitting around, and so, you know, they're not too pretty right now, but this morning I'll be taking all these flanges off, and then they'll go back to the blaster and get blasted, and then we'll start over fresh. You take a look over here. This is a Series 2 wing, but this is just like all the wings that you're pretty much ever going to see. The flanges are glued in, and this one's popped off. The glue's popped off up there. But these flanges are glued along their length, and then they're welded on both ends, spot welded to these heavier 16-gauge brackets. And so this is what the flange looks like. We make the flanges new. See how the 2 top holes are round, and then the next 3 holes are slotted so that you can move this edge in and out when you're fitting the bonnet. And then it's got these brackets up here that go like this, that spot weld this in, and then there's also this bracket down here that you'll trim down like that, and that welds this in so that this isn't going to come apart under tension. And you've also got this main rib down here, which is a stamping, and you can see where it's stepped down here and spot welded on the ends and then glued in the middle. Okay? Now, so like I said, that's a Series 2 wing. That's like most of the wings that you're going to see. These early wings are different. Now, if you look, these 2 here are really early. And you can see that the flange in the middle is not glued. It is spot welded to the skin. You can see that there. It's a little dark. But see, it's spot welded to the skin directly. And then you'll see it does not have those slotted holes. It just has 5 regular holes in it, and it doesn't have these special brackets at the end. Because it's spot welded all the way along, it doesn't need those. You need those with the glue. Now, if you kind of come back up and look down onto these, you'll see that there are 5 holes in here. And actually, that one looks like it's got a Lancaster shrinker stretcher action on it. But you can see the holes are different. See how these are kind of toward the back, these are kind of toward the front, they're all over the place. Pretty sure they put the bonnets together without holes, because you can tell these are drilled and not punched, and then drilled them as they were fitting them. Now down here on the bottom, you can see this main rib is also spot welded all the way along, like that. And then this has the latch for the inside bonnet latches, okay? So now if you look up here, you can see again, this flange up here is also spot welded in. You can see, well actually before we go to that, we talked about how these didn't have holes and they drilled them. Look over here. This is still an early wing, still spot welded on here, all right? But you can see they've now put in the slots. Now, we don't know, but we're pretty sure that even though they put in the slots here and spot welded this to the wing, the guys at the factory putting it together just kept right on drilling their own holes anyway. And you'll see that on this one and that one over there. Now, if you come up here, this top flange is also spot welded. It looks like this. We make those too. All right? But then look right here. This whole front portion of the wing is a separate piece that is, they've kind of got like a seam welder that runs along with a wheel and welds that and mashes it at the same time. If you look on the back side of one of these, see, for example, This one here, you've got that same seam. And then see all these little marks here? It's not a pick hammer, it's like a spade hammer. That is factory. And what they're doing there is hammering that weld against the dolly so they can sand it down on the outside and make it smooth. You'll see all of these have that same seam. This is very particular to the early ones. But then when you sandblast these down, there is no sign of it out here. Because again, they've sanded it down. Now that one must have been a little bumpy, so they had to pick hammer it a little bit. All right, now if you look up here, you also see this little wiggle shape. That is telltale of these real early wings. And then also, this step here is much deeper. And the location of this cutout for the covered headlight lens is also in a different spot. So that's another reason why these kind of came off as orphans. Sometimes you'll see one of these on an early bonnet from people, not early, but you know, a Series 1 bonnet. Somewhere in the 60s or 70s, somebody has mismatched these, and these don't line up with the center section. Now, I'm going to drill all these flanges off. That's going to reveal a whole track of rust underneath of all of them. And the real kiss of death for the early bonnets, and why they didn't survive very long, was this. See this here? This is where it has rusted between that flange. See, the flange is spot welded. And this is the wheel well area. So all your salt and rust and water and all of that is getting thrown up into here, and then it's rusting in between there, and you're getting this. I've got more early bonnets. I got some in my home garage, and there's just a rust track like this. And so that's why you never see these wings around. We've seen a lot more of these, but these are the only ones that are even remotely restorable. So we're going to drill out these flanges. We'll send them back to John to blast all that rust off of there. And when they come back, we'll have basically kind of a blank. And we'll use that as we assemble the bonnet. And actually, we assemble all of our bonnets, like right here. We'll assemble the bonnet, position the flanges, and then we'll spot weld them back to the skin. And we'll use a zinc weld-through primer on the flange and the skin so that we don't get that rust again. Now, these are very hard to find and very hard to get. We are going to be using, I thought I had two pairs here, but actually have three on one side, one on the other. We are using these four, and there's one more over at the sandblaster, hopefully it's the other side here, the left, to build two welded louver, welded flange, really early bonnets for outside lock cars. This video is probably getting a little long, but this is the typical rear brace that comes off of your typical wing. And so it's, like I showed you before, it's spot welded on the ends, glued in the middle. And see, it's got these little braces in between there. These early ones don't have that. All right? So what we will do if we're using this to put it back on, oh, and then they also have this little thing. See how this is tack welded to here, and then this is spot welded up in there like that. On the early ones, this is kind of cut on an angle. It doesn't have that piece. We will blast this down, get it all cleaned up nice. We'll drill out these spot welds and get these off of there. And then we'll spot weld that to the skin. Now, we won't have to do that with these because they don't have this. But you've got to get these details right when you're doing these early bonnets. I've seen a lot of guys that go out and buy a brand new bonnet. They rip all the glued flanges off, clean the glue off, spot weld those flanges to the bonnet, put it back together. And that's just all wrong. The flanges are wider, they're different, there's little nuances, and you say, all right, well, nobody's really going to know that. The guys that are spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for these super early cars with low serial numbers, they know. And when they look at that car and it doesn't have, you know, just the right stuff, it's like, oh, wrong bonnet, value takes a nosedive. For example, we got an NOS outside lock wing in here a little while ago. It came with a bunch of parts. And you can see, this is the bracket for an outside lock car. I had some of these pulled out, and I'll run them over. And it is spot welded here instead of the inside lock bracket. Okay? Well, that's all right. But look, it's the later style. It's glued in. All right, it doesn't have, now it does have the little spreaders. There's the little spreaders right there. So it's got the spreaders, it's kicked down the end, it's glued in, and then they've put this outside lock bracket on it. That is completely wrong. You would never have an outside lock bracket on a glued flange. So stay right there. We actually do make those. Here they are. I was going to get out the little locks and show you those, but they kind of go right down here like this. But again, on a spot welded one, not on one that's glued. All right? So now, what if you don't have these and you've got an early car? Well, you got to do the next best thing, which is find a good set of original wings, which is what we've got right here. Now, these came in with a customer who had an early car, didn't have his original bonnet, found a fabulous Series 1.5 bonnet, close enough. So we will weld the step flange in here, and we sell those for the headlight conversions, but we'll put that right in there with a pattern, and that'll be perfect. And then we have taken the 3 flanges out. Now, they were glued and then spot welded on the ends. You can see there's a little bit of damage here from the spot weld on the ends. But we will then use these to build up the bonnet. These are a perfect blank. They don't have that seam there, but let's face it, it's on the part of the bonnet that you never see, so it'll be all right. And we'll put flanges in there that are just the right width and size and all of that. So that's what you do when you don't have one of these. You go to the next best thing, which is an original wing that you're using for a blank. So I think that's it. I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about on these early wings. It took me almost 10 years to get these 4, plus like I said, there is a 5th one. There's more, but you know, they're rusted off up to here and all. And so these are destined for, 2 of them are going on my outside lock car, and 2 of them are going on an outside lock car in Australia that we're building a bonnet for. So hope that's interesting to you guys that don't have the early cars, and hope it's informative to the guys who do. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.